You're listening to SM Media.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rangers Assessment, your exclusive SM Media Rangers podcast. I'm Scott McPike. It is always a pleasure to be your host, and I find it important that in times of darkness, we do come and we give an honest assessment. That's what the channel's for, about what's happening in the world of Rangers, and we always bring out the best whenever there's a bit of negativity, and it's the same here. I'm delighted to welcome my special guest tonight from the Ibrox Channel. It's a pleasure to welcome back onto the podcast, Andrew Simpson.
Hi, Scott. It's a shame it wasn't in better circumstances, but yeah, it was going to be a heck of a post-mortem, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is important that I think we do look at it and do go over it without being too much the world's ending. Like I think a lot of us do have that feeling, but there are we can look at this and hopefully kind of come to an understanding of what's happened and why it's happened. But as I say, we've not obviously done this in the past few weeks because of kind of other things that have been going on in terms of myself. But it was always we were always going to do a post match show after this. It didn't matter if the house was not nearly done, which it nearly is now. We were always going to come back on and do this because it's that game. It's a massive, massive game. It's the first real test of where the team's at. But the problem, Andrew, is that there was very little positivity and excitement leading into this game. And yes, as the managers pointed out, and a few people have pointed out, Ross County it was a good performance, it was a good result, but Champions League was a disaster. Motherwell was there was some positives, but it wasn't great, but mostly. I mean, it's from I look at the last time I remember feeling this negative about a Rangers side was probably progress. Like I genuinely
Hmm.
thought this is this doesn't look good. And again, maybe kind of different circumstances because like, I think we've definitely got a better manager now. But I don't think the squad. I don't think then to now. I think there's similarities you can look at. I don't think the squad's anywhere near close enough to challenging Celtic for a title. I don't think it's really cut out to be real factors in Europe like it maybe was even 2 years ago. And yes, that might be negative, and I will warn everybody it will not be a positive podcast because there's not a lot of spin you can put on it. But I can't remember the last time I felt that Celtic, who I don't think are as good now as they were then, I just feel they're miles ahead of Rangers just in terms of structure, like pace, everything. I just feel as if they should be as far ahead as they are, but it's not like they're having to do very much to do so. It's just Rangers, and to be honest, the past couple of months have been an absolute calamity.
Yeah, if you were to separate all the areas that, side by side, I think they are way ahead in most of them. Like you said there, they're much faster. I think they're even much stronger. It's interesting when you look at you compare the pre-seasons, and obviously they primarily had the same team from last year, but they have motored on and they've become stronger and better. Whereas we seem to, yes, we're going through a transitional period, which is something that does happen, and you don't always get instant results, but you are also now questioning certain things tactically, which can be altered. Yeah, it's yeah, I'm a glass half full person. I've always have been.
Yeah,
I can see
I'm
positives.
very much not, and that's where I think kind of leads into my frustration. I'm very much the opposite of that.
I know, and I can understand that. It's like going into this game this week. I thought the best result we could get would be a draw, personally. I know there was a few others. There wasn't many, but there was a few others that thought maybe 3-1 and stuff. And I thought, wow, that would be a heck of a result. Obviously, you go through the notions, you have your blue tinted specs, the battle fever starts on the day, but I just thought 1-1 would be the best we could get because, we've got to be honest. How many times have we won at Parkhead this millennium? It's not often, there's a handful of times. Is that going to change anytime soon? I don't, at the minute, it doesn't feel like it.
Well, that's kind of where we kind of dissect the game, and I think we can look at games in the past and say, like, we've been down this route before. I mean, I think it's 2 years to the day from that abysmal performance at Parkhead. That was the 4-0 game, remember the one with McLaughlin? Like, we've been down this road before. I think the difference from then to now is that, yes, that was a Geo team that I think really, I don't think he recovered from that, and obviously Champions League. But I think there is probably less than there was. I think there is still a wave of the support who want to side with Clement, and I'm amongst that, and I think you are too. We can't keep going down the route of, right, that's the first Old Firm game out the window. It's been a bit of a doing. Let's get rid of the manager and bring someone else in. My big thing is, and I put this on Twitter not long after the game. If you're in the camp of you want rid of the manager's not got it. Do you really trust this Rangers board to make the decision to appoint a new manager? Because, and again, I don't want to make this is a full on slot on the board. I think they deserve a lot of the blame. I don't think they deserve all the blame. I think there's blame to go around, but they take a hell of a lot of it. But I don't trust them to appoint another manager.
Mm.
And that's my problem, is that near enough since Steven Gerrard left, probably before that, because I do think this leads back to winning 55 and not backing Gerrard at that point to go and push for Champions League and go and push to really put a marker down in Celtic when the opportunity was there. That to now has just been regression, totally self-inflicted. I think there's a lot of people that deserve a lot of blame, but this is the culmination of that. This is it, and that's where I do give Clement a portion of patience, because he's inherited a total mess that he's had to fix. And yes, you can say he's not learning from his mistakes, and we will look into that, because I think tactically he got it totally wrong. But this isn't just a thing. This hasn't just happened overnight. This has been 2.5 years of totally regressing in terms of being a football club. Like, the difference in just the structure of the club, just who's running the club, who's there making football decisions. I mean, it's mad. It's really, really poor. And until you fix that, I do think this is going to be a regular occurrence. I do think it is going to be pushing for second. Like, that is like, I don't think, I think it's still finish second, but it's not. Forget about challenging Celtic. That ship has sailed, because that squad in place right now is nowhere near capable of competing for a championship. It's
Mm.
not.
Yeah. A few things in regards to the manager. With the way that the board have been downsizing everything, anybody we brought in would be on a lesser wage, and it'd be a downsized operation, unless they were trying to go for somebody box office to bring the fans back in. But I just don't see that, like you
No.
say. You'll get a slight new manager bounce, but then realistically, it's the same players. There is a plan now. The proof will be in the pudding a few years down the line. Now, I don't know when that'll be. Will it be a couple of years? I don't know. But this plan, planning for the future, not the short term. Well, obviously, this is the short term right now. And just because you're planning for the future doesn't mean you can't plan for the short term.
Yeah.
Loan signings, players like that. I know we do have signings. I think we could have done better on the transfer deadline, but obviously we were hamstrung. Finances are an issue right now.
Yeah. That comes from 2 years of,
Mismanagement.
yeah, total
Yeah.
mismanagement. And again, we can dissect it all, like, not backing Gerrard now. Again, I don't. We kind of have heard some of the players that Gerrard was looking at. Would they have kicked Rangers on? Yeah, I think they would have. The season after, it's clear that Gio had a very different mindset than the people running the club had in terms of bringing players in. I think that shows. the year after that, you give, in all seriousness, a charlatan free reign, and you saw that these are common, not common, but these are real problems that are beginning to fester now because Clement, he did come in and get a boost. He won a trophy. Do you know what I mean? He did get that boost straight away. You saw the difference just in terms of results. Do you know what I mean? You saw. I go back to that game against Aberdeen last season, where the atmosphere was just totally toxic. Like he managed to recover that. There was a title run up until there wasn't, and from there, and you saw it with performances. You saw it, and you look at the wage bill, and one thing Rangers didn't get was value for wage, and we've seen that. We see that if you've seen a copy of the wage bill, it's totally ridiculous. Some of the wage the contracts were get carried out. That obviously had to be addressed, but the one thing you do, and this is what Celtic did very well under Postecoglou when he came in, they had to really change their squad because that squad had gotten not it wasn't as bad as where Rangers were, but it was a
It's a bit
case of
stale.
yeah, some of the players had kind of ran their course. Yeah, some of the players had kind of reached that kind of peak. There was a couple of players there that needed moved on. They were in big wages, but what Celtic did was, and you can argue they had the money to do it. They front loaded. They spent a lot of money, and they knew that if they spent money and it clicks, they'll make it back within two signings, which is what's happened. They've paid for the rebuild with Jota and O'Reilly. I mean, not you need the money to do that, but I look at where Rangers have been the past couple of seasons, but there's been three rebuilds.
Mm.
And that's where the squad is at now. You look at the squad from 55 to now, and it's night and day, and it's night and day, and it's really, really noticeable. It was noticeable on Sunday, where I thought off the ball Rangers were at the time. I thought Rangers were atrocious. Just until apart from the first 10 minutes in early second half, Rangers just were in cloud cuckoo land. And it wasn't just one or two, it was a collective of
Oh, 100%.
they don't know what they're doing. They do not
100%.
know they do not know how to approach this. They do not have the character for this game. And I'm looking at players like I thought Bernardo, McGregor, even Greg Taylor, for example. All they had to do was just do you know what I mean? Just keep their head up and they were walking through Rangers. And that to me is the most alarming thing is that I don't look at this as a classic Rangers. I don't see
No, there's no
the
heroes in there at the minute.
nah, no. And I think somebody summed it up really well. And I don't want to steal a phrase, but that this does speak to me. There's not many like leading men in there. There's a lot of bit part players. There's not many people you can hang your hat on that's going to carry you through a season. Sort of what like Hatate and Forrest did for Celtic last season when they came back. They came back and just galvanised Celtic, and you saw the difference. Look at a character like Alistair Johnson, who I think every Rangers fan probably despises, but you would kill to have somebody like that in your team because
Somebody
he's
can
just got
defend.
he's
Yeah.
just got that character. He's just got that character
Mm.
for that big game that I don't see. And that's not just a case of the right back. And again, that's something we can get into because that again is just not learning. But there's just so many things. And again, with the sake of sounding boring, we've seen this before. This movie, this is exactly the same. It's Groundhog Day. It's just the same problems that have just festered, but it's worse now because that Clement doesn't have. Oh, this isn't my team. This isn't my situation. Yes, he's been hamstrung with the window, and it was a shambles, but he's been given a 4-year deal, which I think was ludicrous. Not because of giving him the contract. It's you've sacked two managers in the past two seasons, and then you decide to dish out a 4-year contract shortly after saying that there was no money. I mean,
Yeah, and the way that it was announced as well in the eve of the season, it was a bit of a
yeah,
strange kind of. I, personally, I don't know if that's to do with some sort of agreement over you're not going to be getting as much as we expected for the transfer window. Let's sweeten it this way. I don't know if it's something like that. Don't get me wrong. It also
and I've
does
seen
show that
and I've seen
Clement is
people
committed,
and I've
but
seen people saying Clement. I've seen people laying into Clement going, "Oh, he knows what he's doing." If you and I work in quite high pressure jobs, right? So I think you know what I'm getting at here. So if your boss comes to you with a contract that's going to give you money for 4 years, guaranteed money, even if you do well or do badly. Are you going to go, nah, do you know what? I'm going to leave that now
Hmm.
because, of course, you're not. That and
That's
that,
it, especially in that cutthroat world. No, exactly.
yes, exactly. He needs to secure his goods, but what it tells me is that he's going to get the time. Now, one thing that I kind of concluded probably probably at the start of August was they're not just building for one window. This can't be done over one window. It's just impossible. Just with the state the club's in, just in terms of the squad. I mean, big earners at the time. Davis was there. Davis' wage was ludicrous. I've said that before.
Ugh.
The replacing Bassey with him, I think's as bad as I've
I'll
ever
be
seen.
honest, the fee we paid for him as well when
Yeah,
Liverpool only got him for 1 million the year before and didn't even utilise him was a bit of weird from why we were purchasing him at that
yeah.
price. It was a bit of an eyebrow raise at that time as well. But
But the
yeah.
one thing that Davis was a left-sided centre back, right? And I have been screaming for that since last season. You need somebody in there who the way the game of football's going. I think Clement is quite sharp to this. You need ball playing centre backs. You need somebody
Mm,
who's strong aerially, strong in the tackle. You need a left, and it wasn't a coincidence to me that he was looking at the boy Cordoba. That was one of the
mm.
early rumours. He was very early in the transfer rumor mill. I think that was like the start of June. That didn't turn out, and we didn't hear many defensive news until maybe a week before the window.
Yeah, because there was about three links, I think, of the week. You're right. Yeah.
So my worry is that he's clearly identified that as an issue, and I think you've been saying not to because Davis is not the answer. But if you identify that issue and then you don't get your number one, that's where scouting recruitment comes in, and you just right. We have a list here. We don't get the guy we want. We need to move on to the next one, and you try and get. You don't just ignore it. That's what Bale suffered from the season before. Remember? Yeah, the only defender I need is Leon Balogun.
Mm,
I mean, that defence has been a shambles for 2 years, more than that,
yeah.
and it's worse now because the one glaring thing was, and we'll probably spend a lot longer on Tavernier, but the fact that he's still the starting right back when he's been exposed several times over the past 12 months, and this game against the same opponent just is just horrendous to me that that's been allowed. I cannot believe that Rangers have not looked at right back. And
The fact as well, obviously we know about Tavernier and how he's regressed in the past like 6 to 9 months, and it's been quite alarming. Obviously, he seemed to be carrying a bit of an injury towards the end of last season, was out for a big chunk of pre-season, so missed that. He's come back very slow because, of course, he hasn't had a proper
the
pre-season.
worst thing is, though, he knows he's lost it. That's
Oh,
the
but you
problem.
can see it in his face. You
Yeah,
can
you
see
can
it.
see it.
He looks a different man
Yeah,
at the minute, James Tavernier, and that's this is where have you just got to step aside and go, okay, do I go? Obviously, there's rumors at the minute. Now they're just rumors. They've come from the Sun, so you never know really what comes from there. But there are rumors that a couple of Turkish sides are looking at him because their window doesn't close until the 18th of September. Could he look for a way out? A nice little payday. I want to say leaving a high. It would be
if
leaving on a
that
high,
if that
but
was the case, though, why not just do it then?
I
Why
know.
wait until the window shut when you can't bring anybody in? Because again, I was very much of the opinion he needed to go because I can see where this is going, and I saw it last season. The goodwill that he had in terms of
Oh,
the goal
it's
scoring
gone now.
record, it's gone, and it's non-recoverable because what got him that goodwill was the uniqueness of his ability, which was the dynamism going forward, the ability
Mm.
to put a free kick in. Yes, he can still do that, but I noticed on Sunday he he was trying to get forward. He was trying to do the old things, but when Rangers were getting dispossessed, he can't get back.
No.
And then you've got Maeda, who just has more energy than any player I've ever seen.
He seems to be getting fitter as well.
Yeah, and he's just acres of space, and
Mm.
the
See, the whole thing with Sterling being in front, I thought was there to help out a possession, drop
yeah,
back a bit. But the weird thing was at times I saw Cherny back more helping out there. which then you haven't got an avenue up front. So then you
No,
kind of have got a bit of a disjoint. Now,
yeah.
Sterling, as good as he has been playing in midfield, he's not been superb in midfield so far this season. So, why not put him back at right back? Now, I know you don't want to necessarily hook your captain out of a team, but I think a decision does have to be made, and I think it does. I think it does have to happen.
The problem you've got though is that he's the highest earner. So you can't not play your highest earner because that's not getting value for wage. But you can't play him at right back, especially in games like this, because he can't do what he did anymore. And he's never been the best defender. We know that. I go back to, do you remember the Scottish Cup final against Hibs in Warburton's first season?
Yes, 2016.
Stokes ripped him
Yeah.
apart that game. That was 8 years ago. And we had those concerns then, but as I say, it was covered up by the fact he was very, very good going forward and very effective. But now he's lost that, and he knows he's lost that. So do you do do you get him out the team entirely, as you say, move him, try and move him on before any other windows go? I don't think the Saudi window's still going. I think that ended, but you you doing that though, you've lost. Yes, you've got the wages gone, but you then don't have an option at right back.
Mm.
You've just left yourself further hamstrung. Now, the other option is do you move him into a different position? But the problem is that it's never ever been tried. It's been tried once. I remember
Yeah,
Warburton trying it against Hamilton. I think it was Hamilton and
didn't work.
Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And it's not that it didn't work. It just didn't. He never really know. It wasn't really enough time to go
Mm.
right that he's made. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, true. The thing
I,
is, he doesn't really have that attacking prowess now. I
no,
just don't really see it. Like he had that chance where he did the classic Tav ghosting in at the back post when the ball came over to him and then he hit it, but it looked like he didn't hit it with any conviction. 2 years ago, he would have scored that. It would have been right in, not too dissimilar to his goal against Dortmund. Yeah, a serious question has to be asked now in regards to James Tavernier and persevering isn't going to make things work. Now, like you say, you don't want to keep your highest earner off the pitch, but then we have got some extreme high earners that weren't even featuring even on the bench this
yeah,
season. So I don't think Clement
that's another thing.
necessarily.
That's another
Yeah.
thing for later on. Yeah, like, but well, I'll say obviously getting into the game, first 10 minutes, Rangers do start quite brightly. Do you mean they're aggressive in the press? That they're not really letting Celtic happen, make anything happen. But the problem is they get dispossessed. Celtic one pass it cuts open the
Mm.
midfield, and Kuhn goes very early, ever so slightly early. It's the line. It's minuscule, but the problem is that Celtic score from literally their first chance,
Mm.
and instead of Rangers feeling they got off with one, what happens to Rangers is that they go right, okay, that's what happens when we lose the ball, so we can't be aggressive in the press anymore. Or that will happen. But what then happens is that 2 minutes later, when they do try and be a bit more compact, the same thing happens. And the one thing you have to do in those games, especially against a side with a lot of pace, which Celtic have, you have to be concentrated. You have to be switched on. Look at that first goal. Just look at Matondo. And again, Matondo's probably another segment in himself. Nobody tracks their runner. Do you know what I mean? Johnston and boy Kuhn, they're able. Bernardo, I thought Bernardo was excellent for Celtic, but the reason he was excellent is because he got a lot of time and space because nobody could really live with him. But
Nobody could actually match his pace either.
no,
That was
no,
another thing. That first 10 minutes, Rangers had looked the best I've seen them at Celtic Park in a long time. Now, we looked good. We pressed up really high. Our two centre backs was standing right at the centre circle, and we were forcing them into mistakes. Now that Celtic back line, it was a little bit questionable last year. The Celtic
it
fans
does
had a bit of
have
a
a mistake
question.
in it, but it doesn't
Oh,
get
it does.
exploited.
It does, especially when you've got Taylor at the side. Sorry, at the left hand side. There's mistakes that can come there, and they were making mistakes. There's a few times they put the ball out of play, and there was a point where they did lose the ball in a dangerous position, and you're thinking, right, this is on for us today. But there was one thing I did notice, like you say, that one quick pass, the amount of times off the ball that Kyogo was coming in midfield, waiting for the pass, then running. Nobody was with him. Nobody was with him. There was a couple of times they failed to play the ball to him. If they had played the ball to him, just a simple through ball, he was through. That defence was really split, which was strange because I've seen our defence be so compact at times to a fault
Yeah.
where it was then too stretched. no runners were being tracked. You look at that first goal, and when you break it down, it's a great move from Celtic, but it's essentially a couple of passes that
How many times have we seen that goal?
you see that first pass being made, and you know the second and the third. You could just
Yeah.
see it coming.
And you know what's going to happen is that somebody's going to lose their man. And Proper, who had an absolute stinker, and it's not, and I'm not cutting him any slack here, but what else can he do otherwise? Try and go for the header. Try and do something just to avoid that, because if you're coming into that Rangers defence, he has to have watched clips and go, especially in this game, how do I stop? He tries to do something that I haven't seen. He tries to go for a header. It doesn't work. But look at Maeda's starting position in that
Mm.
move, and look at Tavernier's starting position. There's almost
Oh,
10 yards between them.
don't.
And
Tav
again,
was in the right place at that moment because you're thwarting
but the
anything
problem is,
coming
but
in, but he didn't track.
Maeda's in the start in the right place because he knows
Mm.
he can get in front of Tavernier because Tavernier's not got the pace to handle him. That's the issue, and Maeda knew that, and that's where the first goal comes from. Could Butland do better? Yes, but it's the goal. That goal's been seen too many times. We've seen that so often, and that's not learning mistakes, and that's where I want to bring the manager in because I really like Philippe Clement, and what I like about him is that he came in and the first thing he did was let us all know the frustrations we shared as a support. He understood, he got it, he understood the symbolic training regime. He understood how things weren't being done right. He understood the squad was a shambles. Do you know what I mean? He understood all that, but you get judged in these games. These are the
Mm.
games that I don't care about a 6-0 home win against Ross County. If you then follow up with this, that goes out the window.
Well,
It's
no, yeah, totally. Well, you look at Clement when he came in and he says, I don't want to see any, lateral passes anymore, and we have seen that far too often now.
yeah.
Obviously, when he came in, steadied the ship, we were playing quite well, but we are seeing like almost a revert to type a little bit. Now, like you say, when these set pieces are analysed, because their first goal came from a throw in,
Yeah.
you know what's happening. You could watch that goal, you can get mixed up with a goal from last season, a goal from a season before, get into the byline, cutting it back. We know where it's going right into that mixer, and not one of us is fast enough to react to that.
There was a clip going about on Twitter. I don't know who put it up, but it was 4 different Rangers Celtic games all at Parkhead, and the same thing happens with the goalkeeper and the two centre backs, and it's 4 different games, but it's the exact same thing. There's just no pace to get the ball forward, and that's the problem I've got here is that I don't see Walter Smith, and again Walter Smith. The one thing he could do was he could look at a game. I've grown up, and you've grown up as well. Celtic were always the better football team. I've always
Well,
been
yeah,
the better team at
100%.
playing football. But what Rangers were good at was they made it very difficult for Celtic to do anything with the possession. They made it very difficult. They made it very compact. I don't see that now. And again, that's probably the glaring thing to me is that Rangers teams just that this isn't a Rangers team of classic years, and I know obviously it's been different since what happened, and I get that, but Gerrard understood it. Gerrard understood. He made it very hard for Celtic to do much with their possession. If Celtic won an Old Firm game at Parkhead, they deserved to win it because
Mm.
Rangers were very, very good off the ball. They were quite compact. But the past three seasons, I've not seen it, and
No.
I just can't. I can't keep watching this because it's not learning from mistakes. And I do want to make a wee mention. Obviously, I watched it live and then I watched the game back. I always watch the game back the day after, but just to kind of, especially for doing this, I want to see things that I've maybe not noticed during the game watching it live. The only thing that really came to mind is, and this is during the game, I was very much in Diamandi's back because I felt he was just running about like headless chicken. I just felt as if he just didn't know what to do. He just didn't have the mindset to do anything. He was trying a couple of things with the ball that just weren't coming off. But then I watched the game back and I watched and I paused it and played it a couple of times. He's having to do like 5 jobs because the centre forward isn't pressing. The centre forward can't do it. The centre forward's not moving at times. Matondo is all over the shop. Czerny's not really wanting to come out of position. because I think he knows what's behind him. I think he knows that he kind of has to stick there. Barron and Sterling are trying so hard. They're so deep. They're having to come so deep because, as you say, Kyogo's coming back for the ball. Bernardo's running point basically. So Diamante's having to do like 5 jobs. And one thing I won't fault after it is his work rate, but it just was the case of nothing was happening, nothing was coming off, nothing was working. And
See, this is what frustrates when you look at that first 10 minutes. That first 10 minutes, the only thing we didn't do was really get a chance away. Obviously, we got that Matondo header, but how can we do it then and then just completely fall out of our backsides? Now, that would, to me, look at the psychology of us as a team. What happens for our preparation for games? Because it happens all the time. Now, we used to speak about the mindset of the squad. Obviously, got players still there like James Tavernier that have got that scarring. But then we've got a lot of newer players in there. Yes, some of them, their first Old Firm, you can understand sometimes, rabbit in the headlights. But there is something seriously wrong. And I don't know if it's the way we prepare for games. Obviously, tactically, there were definitely things wrong that weren't changing. Celtic were adapting throughout the game. And to be fair, you saw they worked him out very quickly because they knew he was going to be a threat. And
yeah,
you knew he was being stopped getting onto his left foot. And they made it look easy. And the thing is, that's the worrying thing. Yes, it was 3-0. Yes, the chances on paper were fairly even, but they stopped because they were 2 up and they slowed down a little bit because they didn't need to.
yeah, yeah. And you obviously met the second goal. There's so much wrong here. And again, Butland is somebody I want to get your thoughts on because I think we've been on podcasts before where we've sang Jack Butland's praises, and rightly so.
Mm.
He's come up with some big moments, but there has been a regression. And it's been covered up because there's been so many other problems. And I'm not one for saying I do think Jack Butland has been tremendous for Rangers so far, but I'm not ashamed to say that he's been poor for a few goals
Mm.
this season, and you almost don't want to criticise him because you're like, right, okay, but imagine if Butland wasn't there last season, Rangers, if Jack Butland wasn't there last season, Rangers would have been in a horrendous position,
Mm.
right?
No,
Jack Butland kind of saved the early stages. He kind of kept it a fight for a while. But you can say with that second goal, his positioning's atrocious because anybody that watched that will know that will see that he's way too far. Kyogo does very well to win the ball, but Neil McCann said during the commentary what a finish that is. It's not a finish that's unstoppable.
passed into the bottom corner
Yeah,
essentially.
it's a cool finish, but the problem is that it's not even in the corner. It's an easy finish because Botland's positioning is atrocious, but Proper doesn't know where to go. Proper can't close it
Yeah.
down because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know whether to stick here. I thought the centre backs were atrocious all game. Now, Suter's another one. Now, we've obviously mentioned Butland first. Butland, I do think he needs to find his form quickly, and I'm not just saying that because. And the one thing I will give him slack is that the back line the entire time he's been here has been a shambles.
Mm.
And it wasn't great on Sunday either. It was terrible on Sunday, but it doesn't make up for poor positioning. And you can say that, yeah, despite him being excellent for a long, long time, he was poor on Sunday and he's been poor probably start the remainder of the season. A lot of the goals that Rangers have conceded have been poor from him.
Jack Butland, I'll be honest, has really yet to prove himself in an Old Firm. Now, since he's come in, we haven't won an Old Firm game, but there's not been many times that you've gone, oh wow, he's kept us in that for a
Yeah,
bit. He's generally been picking the ball out the net. Now, don't get me wrong, you look at the opening game of last season, the opening Old Firm. They only really had one shot, and that was that Kyogo one right into the corner. He couldn't do much about it, fair enough. But in these big games, he does become a bit anonymous. Now, is it because we're used to such a high standard of goalkeeper? Alan McGregor was world class. I have to say it. In his prime, he was absolutely world class. He could save most penalties that came at him. We're even used to keepers like Stefan Klos, who was a very good shot stopper. All right, his distribution might not have been there, but and of course the goalie himself. We always have great goalkeepers. Now, Jack Butland is a good goalkeeper, but I just don't necessarily think he's that level like McGregor was in his peak and other keepers. we've seen it a couple of times, even pre-season, the one that went underneath them. It's probably more to do with form at the minute. But in the Old Firm games, because I think the only real save he made in that game was the one from Proper where he flicked it towards him
Yeah.
as the cross came in, and it was a good save to be fair, but it's at the right height, really. But yeah,
Suter's another one because the problem I've got with Suter is that the worry I had with him when he came in was that he's not going to be fit enough to play to be a starting centre half. But I didn't even notice this until he started playing for Rangers. His concentration at times is atrocious. Like he will
all over him. Yeah,
sometimes he can just switch off mid pass. And the problem is that proper should be the number one, right? Because he's been bought to be that. Now, you can say that he had a poor game and he's not started great, and I understand that. And I do want to say it's way too early to judge whether Robin Proper is going to be good. But one bad game doesn't make up for, you know what I mean, what could be
mm.
a good Rangers career. But he's had to play left side, and the reason he's had to play left side is because the manager's seen, we've all seen, John Suter cannot play left sided centre back. So Robin Proper's had to move to left sided centre back to suit John Suter, pardon the pun. John Suter's not done enough to get that. Do you know what I mean? To get that time. If John Suter's going to start, if you want to start if you want to start John Suter, then sign a left-sided centre back. Do you know what I mean? Don't
Mm.
sign Robin Proper to replace Connor Goldson, which is probably what's happened. Send out Ben Davis, which I'm not disagreeing was a bad move. It was a totally right move to do. Get him up, get him away because he's not the answer. But don't put Suter to right centre back and then play Proper left centre back. That's not that's
No,
poor. That's poor management to me.
that
That's poor
is.
squad management. Like Balogun's still there. I think a lot of people will say rightly that Balogun's the best centre half, but the fact that Balogun's the best centre half is just
That says
more
a lot
and
about
more.
our defense.
It
Yeah.
just says no. It says more and more about how poor the squad management's
Uh,
been because,
mm.
like, what is why has nobody fixed that defence? Now I get the boy from Feyenoord's come in, and I do think he's raw, and I've seen a wee bit of him at Feyenoord. I can't say I've seen enough of him to say he's going to fit, but last season he played more as a fullback. So in deadline day when he was the first name mentioned, I was like, right, okay, might be a right back situation to try and get Sterling into midfield, but you need to sign a left sided centre back. I can't see John Suter play again in a. Do you know what I mean? But
Mm.
unless he does something majestic, unless he's because his concentration's so off, and the problem is Celtic's forwards are so intelligent. They're equally as intelligent as Suter is Dozy. And it's just a mismatch, and there's a lot of mismatch in that forward to defence.
Suter has some good qualities with the ball at his feet. I guess that goes to the kind of way that he wants to play from the back. I get that. He was good at Hearts, very good, especially in that type of team where, I guess so the problem was that Hearts team was more his level when you're seeing the players that were around him at the time. I did like Suter, and I still do to a degree. He's had his injuries. Has he fully came
I
back
think
from
he's
them?
at best third choice.
Yeah, but again, it said a lot about our defense
Yeah,
that
no,
you looked at the
totally. Yeah,
players that were there, the choices. Davies, really wasn't the answer.
no.
Somebody that would, with Suter, he gets caught with the ball over his head sometimes, and you see that, and you do see them going for that ball, and you think he's going to get caught out here. It's it's not necessarily the answer, but can he do a job? Yes, but like you say, third, maybe second at a push. Yeah, uh, it's a difficult one. The whole balance of that back line is off.
No,
You've
it's
got
totally
James
off.
Tavernier, who can't really defend, never really been a great defender, but made up for it in other ways. You've got two centre backs kind of the wrong way around in a sense.
And the other thing is, there's absolutely no pace.
Yeah, and the left back is currently, well, at the minute it's Hefty, but I think we utilise him more in midfield because I think we get more output from him when Yilmaz is back, and that's the thing. I liked Yilmaz when he came in, but he was up against Bona Barisic, so Did that make him look better? I don't know because
And you
he's
can't rely on him for consistency because he's picking up injuries all the time. And that's another thing as well. The injuries that Rangers pick up, again, it's constant. And it's not, it goes beyond luck. It's a serious issue because it's game after game. And you're talking about the squad not being
there's
addressed.
something we do that
Yeah,
we're not doing now.
yeah.
They were talking about training plans where everyone was on pretty much a same generic one, which you can't do. You got players at different ages, different stages of fitness. You can't do that. Now, obviously, clearly that probably has changed now, but what is still wrong?
But here's another thing as well, right? And again, I'm not one. If I picked up an injury playing football, I would want to play on, right? It's a lot of players do. How many times have you seen a player pick up an injury, pick up a niggle, then 10 minutes later they're coming off? They've picked up the niggle, they're further making it worse by continuing to play. If you're having the same injury problems time after time, manager, doctor, somebody steps in and goes, do you know what? If we're getting an injury, get him off straight away because he's further making it worse. Raskin last season, Seema,
Oh God, yeah.
they were coming back way too early and then they were out for longer because they felt they had to come back. And that's because the squad isn't good enough. The squad hasn't got enough bodies. The squad hasn't got enough able bodies ready to play long games, which are going to do it, Rangers. But that's what, 5, 6 games? Yilmaz has been taken off early. Raskin's been taken off early. Cortez, Matondo proper went off injured the game as well previously. I'm missing somebody else. Balogun went off as well. That's 6 players. And that's not even the start of September.
Yeah.
This is a glaring, glaring problem. Until you address that, you can't go, right, we've got 2 players for this position. You don't because players are picking up injuries all the time. Players are getting played out of position. Players don't know their jobs. Players don't know what they're going to... Players are different. I mean, it's just glaringly bad how the medical structure has been. The amount of players picking up injuries all the time, coming back too early, picking up the same injuries again. It's just damaging. But in terms of the striker position now, people are fed up with us talking about Cyril Dessers because we're going to have the same conversation we've had for a season, which is can show qualities, can show that he can finish, but big games like Sunday, his 2 glaring chances, doesn't do enough with them, and then you're leaving going, he's not the answer up front. We've been through this, right? What what do you do there? Do you just admit, right? Do you remember how Chris Boyd would play against Falkirk, but then you wouldn't see him for a European game, Celtic game?
Yeah.
You do that with Dessers because you can't rely on him in these Celtic games because that's another Celtic game where he's just totally just been a non-event because he misses too many chances. He's so frustrating, and you look at the difference. And we said this last season as well. Look at Kyogo. Look at a player who's been off form this season. Hasn't been. I think that was his first goal of the season. Gets a chance, takes it. Dessers has scored what 5 and 6, as people kept saying. Who would you rather have right now?
See,
Nobody is telling me Cyril Dessers.
we saw that so often from Kyogo last season.
Yeah,
That first Old Firm game, Ibrox, anonymous, apart from the goal. Came out of
yeah,
nowhere, a great
100%.
goal. Dessers has a place. And to be fair, I like the comparison to Boyd, not in the way he plays, but for the type of striker he is. He does have a place in the team. He will score goals. But when you saw that, I know it was offside, but when you saw him in front of goal, you side foot it round the keeper. Your keeper's come out, just side foot it round and we hit it straight at him. I knew like that chance he had at Parkhead last season when he was 1-on-1. That's it now. You're not going to see much from him, which is sad. Now, like you say, Chris Boyd wasn't really in the big games. I think he only ever scored 1 goal against Celtic for Rangers. And I think in the few games that he did play in Europe, like away at Villarreal, he had that fresh air mist, didn't he? Which was a tap in that would have put us into the quarterfinals, which
Yeah.
was unbelievable. There is a place for Dessers, but even looking yesterday at the bench, now obviously we had Igmani on the bench who was looking sharp with some
I thought he
things.
looked okay, actually.
He did actually. There was one breakaway where he started it, which looked fantastic. But you look at Danilo, a €6 million striker. I think the game would have been too slow for him.
It
I
would
think
have been
that
too
game,
slow. It would have been too slow, and that. But again, that shows what are you actually doing here because yes, he's coming back from injury, and yes, I do 100% agree. I've just spent 2 minutes saying about you can't rush players back. I totally get
Mm.
that. But he came on last week, scored, and he's on the bench and then doesn't get on. Now, at 2-0 down with 20 minutes to go, just throw something.
Oh,
Don't,
100%.
do you know what I mean? Like, he would have been fine for 20 minutes. Throw him and Dessers up together. Do you know what I mean? There was no tactical. I mean, tactically, it wasn't working. Just try anything at that point. But does Danilo, once Danilo's 100%, do you then go to Dessers, right? You've done well in stages, but this is our number one guy. Again, though, you're then the minute Danilo can pick up an injury, and then Dessers are relied on again, and you would have in this same conversation in 3 months because Dessers will score you 25 goals, but he'll take about 400 chances to do that. Whereas Kyogo, if you give Kyogo 400 chances, he's going to score half them, maybe just under that. Do you know what I mean? Like that.
No, no, no. You're
That's
right.
the
You're right.
difference. That's the difference. Maybe 400 is an exaggeration, but you know
No,
what I'm
no, no.
getting
Of
at.
course. No, no. But
Genuine
it has
clinical
a
strikers.
place.
He's not clinical enough to be a Rangers number 9. Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And the subs as a
See,
whole. There you go.
no, what I was going to say is with Dessers, when you watch him off the ball, he does get into the right positions at the right time. There is more chance creation with him because of what he does, but he's a very much a form player.
Yeah.
Now, will this affect him now going into the next game against, was it Dundee United?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and that's the thing. There is a huge question mark over who is going to lead the line for us this season. And in all honesty, I have a feeling it might be Igmani. Just from what we've seen of the little
Yeah.
spurts from him so far, it could very well be that. Not that you're going to leave Dessers out completely because you can't. It's a headache.
Right. And obviously we know it was 3-0, second half. Rangers don't really do much. I thought some of the subs were quite baffling. I thought Lawrence coming on, like Raskin,
Mm,
like Tom Lawrence. Tom Lawrence is another example of I don't think he picked up an injury in his entire career, then comes to Rangers, picks up a bad injury and then loses a yard of pace and is not the player that you got originally, right? That's the problem I've got with Tom Lawrence is that I can see that he's lost a yard. Hadji's the same. Hadji, the whole Hadji thing's an absolute calamity on the club. The club deserve massacred for that. Like
100%.
genuinely ridiculous
100%.
how that's been allowed to happen. Where does this leave the club, the manager, and the players? Because the players are there until January at least. This is the squad. This is the squad that is going to have to pick up the pieces here and go to Tannadice and win. Go into a very tough Europa League and try and get maneuver that because that's not an easy set of games that's coming up. The manager though is in a difficult position because I think a lot of the real honest Rangers fans will look at it and go, he clearly didn't think when he came in that that was going to be his summer. Don't think anybody did. But I'm not surprised at how bad the summer is because looking at the damage that's been done to the squad and the money that's been wasted and the poor deals that have been done and the poor people running the football side of the club, this is where it's at now. And Clement's gonna have this is where Clement will get tested. He will get the time, he should get the time. But here's the problem of signing a 4-year contract. And I'm not one I don't like and with the exception of Michael Beale, who I wanted out probably soon after the Celtic game because he was I think I'd found him out and as a character I just didn't like him. The problem is that the next few games we just have are very, very difficult. Away to Tannadice, Europa League game, and then I think it's away to Aberdeen. I think.
I fly in Aberdeen as well.
Right.
Yeah.
You pick up 1 point from those 3 games and a 4-year deal. Do you know what I mean? It's the
Mm,
manager's going to get it. He's not going to get the sack. But what I mean is that goodwill that Clement built is going because
mm.
this is where the manager's getting really has to step it up. It really has to look at changes. What can I learn from that? I've been in 5 Rangers Celtic games. I've picked up 1 point in 5 games. I'm not doing this right. I need to look at this and learn from that. Bajrami's still to come in. The boy from Feyenoord, I think, can play a role. There's players to come back. Cortez, Yilmaz, for example. Raskin, I think, can play a part as well. Danilo. But it doesn't matter. You're 5 points behind after 4 games.
Mm.
It's
There's no
already
wiggle room. There's no
there's
wiggle
no
room.
wiggle room. And yes, you can say it's. He made a comment. You're not going to see the best Rangers team till October, November. October, November.
See,
If Rangers are 15 points behind Celtic, and they could be because they're not going to be as consistent. Celtic could steamroll everybody. To be honest, Celtic look just that much better,
and they've got depth. Yeah.
and they've got
The
depth.
the thing is, it's them comments that might come back to haunt
Yeah,
Clement because people will, Rangers fans will give a little time and a little bit of understanding when it comes to a rebuild. Obviously, we want trophies, we want to be winning games, but now the manager's comments are being scrutinised more than ever after we hear certain things in press conferences. Obviously, before the window shut, we heard from him that he expects more incomings than outgoings. That didn't quite happen. Now that could have been lost in translation a little bit. Now the chat about you won't see the real Rangers maybe till October time. If we don't see it yet, then there will be severe questions asked. Now it doesn't matter how much of a contract he's got. If it's not going well, the fans will revolt and they will. There's already chat about potentially not going for the Europa League packages. Some people are saying that that's the only way to.
the one thing is, and this is something that again, and I'm not saying here that some of the protests on Sunday were ridiculous. Like, I don't
Abusing
care.
players is
Yeah,
just not no, not
there's
on.
absolutely no need. And again, if you're, I think a lot of those fans are more, get this video with me, I'm going to do something that's going to make me famous. Like, stupid,
Yeah.
just ridiculous. But the one thing that I do think a lot of fans are more unhappy with is the board. Now, when I say the board, I don't mean every single member of the Rangers board because the people do need to understand that it is different. It's not a case of back in the old days where David Murray ran the show. David Murray was responsible for everything. It's not. It's a lot more. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's a lot more kind of spread out now. Do you know what I mean?
People have their
But
roles, yeah.
the problem that John Bennett has is that he obviously I don't think he wants to, but he's made himself the face of the whole thing because instead of appointing a chief executive when Bisgrove left, he said, right, I'll be the interim chief executive. So I think Bisgrove would have caught more flack than Bennett has if Bisgrove was still there. But Bennett, again, the one thing that's jumping out to me is that he's not good at this. He's not good at running a football. He's maybe good at running the overall side of it. He's put a lot of his own money in. I'm not going to knock him for that.
The
What
company
I'm going to
side of things, yeah.
what I'm going to knock him for is that as a football supremo, in terms of running a football club, football team, he's not good at it. And that's the glaring problem is that there's so many glaring problems that come on the board. Like so many bad appointments, so many bad contracts, so many terrible mistakes, one after another. And I'm not just including the Ibrox thing. Obviously, we went through as a calamity that, again, we don't know. We don't. You know what I mean? We're not football. We don't run football clubs. We're football supporters.
No.
We talk about football. We don't really know what happens with shipments from Singapore. I'm not really interested in that. What I'm interested in though is when I see the club that I follow making mistake after mistake, I can't help but think this is again and again, and it falls on the same people making the same mistakes. And until you address that, this is going to keep happening, and this is where the club are at. This is going to be calamity after calamity, and good news obviously tonight that Ibrox is going to be ready for the cup game. Obviously not fully Ibrox, but again, I did expect that. But it's just again and again, I'm seeing the real amateur mistakes that shouldn't be happening at Rangers Football Club. And until you fix that, until you fix the people making those mistakes, It's going to. I mean, it rots from a fish rots from the head up, and
Mm.
I'm not saying that John Bennett is a terrible character, but all I'm saying is, in terms of being a football administrator, in terms of running what he's doing right now in terms of the football side of it isn't working.
No,
So bring in people that can do that, and you might see a difference. But right now, it's not working.
that's where experience needs to come in. We've seen time and time again, we've, had characters headhunted into positions because they've been good at X, Y, and Z. How does that translate into a football club now? I like some of the commercial sides we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, you look at things like Edmonton House, looking at avenues of making money, but that's not going to, the best way of making money at a football club is a player trading model. And, use Matt O'Reilly as example. Was it 2 years to flip him? 1 million from MK Dons, 27 million. You're not going to make that from Edmonton
The
House.
fact that you've got to a Europa League final 2 years ago and you've no players that are sellable assets is total incompetence because, especially outside the top, look at Olympiacos, right?
Mm.
Olympiacos won a Conference League last season. Do you know what I mean? They've got 6 or 7 players that teams will have had their eye on. The fact that in 2 years on, still be some clubs looking at players and going, right, he did well in that Conference League. The fact that Rangers don't have sellable assets, I think, is criminal. And again, it falls on the board because they allowed mistakes after they allowed players to run their contracts down. And again, if you can't get a player to sign a contract, that's fair enough, but you have to try and move them on.
Mm.
That didn't happen because there's some people at the club who viewed those players, the likes of Morelos, Kent, Barisic, Kamara, as they had won us the title. They're here
They were
until
the core, they were the spine.
they
Yeah.
were. Whereas you and I looked at that going, right, they've peaked. They've peaked now. That's the best they can do for Rangers Football Club. They are at a point now you can sell them and make money because you have to do that. It's Scotland. You're not going to make television money the likes of. I mean, Brighton should never be buying Matt O'Reilly,
No.
but because they've got the TV money, they can. Rangers need to look at money elsewhere. Rangers that's where a player trading model comes in. But you can't do that if you don't sell players at peak value, which Rangers haven't. The only time they've done it's Bassey, and let's be honest, that was purely he'd stood out in Europe and he was English. He was English. That purely that.
Yeah. I guess that is the example.
Not
Yeah.
that I'm saying Bassey's a bad player. What I'm saying
No,
is
no, not at all.
that's not the norm. Do you know what I mean? And the fact, as you said earlier, Ben Davis, you don't sell a player like Calvin Bassey and then bring in somebody that's what was 5 years older than him.
Mm.
Sure, that's not a player trading model. That's terrible, terrible. That's terrible squad management. And until that side of the football side gets fixed, Rangers are in a lot of trouble because you could have the best manager, you could have the best players. You know what I mean? There could be 6 or 7 gems in that Rangers squad until you have the players, the people above them who can run that football club like a competent club, which needs to be in the way
Mm.
modern football's went. Rangers are going to be miles behind where they need to
See,
be.
this is the thing as well. It's like we need to sort out things with the B team. Like we actually start to need to have our youth coming through. We need to start having, you spoke last year quite highly on players like Bailey Rice. Why aren't we seeing them when we are a few goals up against Ross
But
County?
look at Ross McCausland as a perfect example of that, right? Ross McCausland comes in, and within what 30 games, people are saying he's not good enough. That's the problem. That you have to get look at Celtic, right? Look at the likes of Liam Scales, right? And I'm not saying Liam Scales is not the best player Celtic have, but he's serviceable.
Mm.
He's came in. Do you know what I mean? And yes, a lot of Celtic fans will say Liam Scales is not the answer, but he was given time. Do you know what I mean? He came in, hit the ground running because he was
I think
allowed
it's
that
because
time.
there was nobody else though at that point, wasn't
Yeah,
there? There was that kind of forced in there, I guess. Yeah.
Rangers have never been able to do that, and it's two things. It's worrying the manager about is always worried in this because I think maybe except from Walter, managers are quite worried to play youth players. McCoist wouldn't bring in a goalkeeper. I mean, it wouldn't bring up a goalkeeper from the youth team. He went and signed way past it because the experience was more important. Now, these players might not be the answer, but you won't know that until you try. Explain to me, like, Matondo. Would you rather have Matondo or would you rather go and like somebody like Archie Stevens, Robbie Fraser, for example? Now, Alex Lowry has probably never took his chance, but there's players there. But you've also got the Leon King side of it,
Yeah.
who was thrown in way too deep and has probably
Worst
never recovered
scenario.
from it.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. But that eats at a manager and that eats at a fan base because they look at, right, we can't throw him in because of what happened to Leon King. No, it just doesn't work. Like, you have to take risks. I mean, it's 5 points behind now. Like, do you know what I mean? The league's gone. The league is totally gone. It's 4 games in.
Do you know what? There's that side to it where for me it's not gone yet. We've been plenty of situations where we've been 5 points behind. The only fear for me is they're not dropping points. So there is that bit at the minute. Personally, I think Clement, I'm gonna, he reckons we'll start to see the real Rangers soon. I'm hoping that's the case.
Well,
But if it's
let me
not going to
throw
happen, then that's when things will start. The fan base will turn.
let me throw something at you, right? Let's say, for example, Rangers are pretty are in a strong run from now until January the 2nd. They don't lose a game between now and January 2nd in the league. And they're 3 points behind Celtic. Celtic have dropped a couple of points. Rangers have been steamrolling teams. Rangers have found it. Celtic come to Ibrox and win. We will be having this same conversation. And we'll be
Correct.
having this same conversation
Because it's the
because
same thing that happens time and time again.
100%.
Doesn't matter if you can finally work out how to beat the teams you should be beating, you need to beat them the other side of the city.
100%. And until you do that, we're going to be having this conversation. And there
No,
is
you're right.
there is there are positives. Let's a couple of weeks. Let's again. I'm going to use the international break to really try and look at positives. Try and see what I can manifest and see if there's anything we can take out the past summer, right? But part of me really worries that this is going to be another manager who just can't do it. And I hope I'm wrong. I really hope that Clement does it because, as I say, I really like him. Really hope he succeeds because if he succeeds, Rangers can succeed. But is he going to get that 18 months? Is he going to get Gerrard? It took Gerrard 2 seasons where things were up and down. There was bad runs. Eventually got it right. Then they didn't back him. Then he left. Then Gio came in, got that early bounce, went to Celtic Park, get annihilated, had the great run in Europe. Then it didn't work out after that. Beale comes in, gets that bounce, and then found out, and then is that shambolic summer. We're in the same boat again. Can't keep doing this. We can't keep going down this circle of sacking managers. So it's again, it's calamity. It's a real difficult one. And to close, mate, where do you want to be? Like, forget you on in the 2nd of January. What's success from now till then before we wrap up? What
You know, that is a good question. For one, no further behind. Two, we need to win that Old Firm game. There needs to be something tangible that the fans can see, that the fans can hold on to and go, okay, we can see what's happening. Now, Philippe Clement is a winner as a manager. You don't go into Belgium, win a league with one team, then go to the rivals and then win that league the next year. That is impossible stuff. Yes, Monaco, there was some question marks, but there was a lot going on there, and I don't necessarily think he was the right fit there. I hope that doesn't happen here. I do have faith in him. A lot of this stuff is external factors that have been going on. Previous boards, previous terrible decisions. Things have to get better. Now, obviously, we've made a couple of signings. They can come into the team. I'm hoping we have no more injuries, but things from previous regimes might rear their ugly heads. Like we might lose 8 players. You know, there was a point last season we were down to a down 11 or 13 players. That is just unheard of. That's insane. These things will not help a manager. Now, like I say, going into January, that game on the 2nd, no further behind, and we win that game. I think that as a rebuild year, I think that's what we have to be aiming for. Obviously, we have to be aiming to win the title. You can never write that off, but yeah, we have to win that on the 2nd. It has to be. It has to be. Clement has to work on that because clearly we have not. If anything, based on that game, we've regressed from the cup final. So he needs to change that.
On that note, folks, we will wrap up there. We will obviously not be there next week because there's no Rangers games, but we'll be back obviously the week after that to cover the game at Tannadice and the Malmo. Look ahead to Malmo. Andrew, I'm sorry it's not better circumstances, mate, but I always enjoy your company. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
No problem. It's good to have a bit of a therapy session, isn't it?
And that's what we'll label this as the post match therapy session. Thanks very much to everyone that's tuned in. We'll have some Rangers content dropping over the next week, so stay tuned for that. And as always, like and subscribe. Thank you very much.